Hi, Cornerstone, it's Scott. Today's Cornerstone connection comes from John chapter 11. Right at this very moment, I'm waiting on a phone call from a friend. I'm awaiting news of his dad's death. I'll be honest, this is a really tough season. I love this family dearly, and I'm very close to them, and so this is a hard one for us. And maybe you're going through a tough season as well. After all, it's Christmas, and many of us have lost loved ones, and it's just hard to go through the holidays thinking that they're no longer with us. Well, I hope that John chapter 11 can offer up some hope and encouragement to you today. You see, in this chapter, we read that Mary and Martha are deeply grieving because their brother Lazarus is ill, and he eventually dies. Word reaches Jesus, and he slowly but surely makes his way over to Bethany, but by the time he does, Lazarus has already been dead for several days. And we see Martha run up to Jesus in verse 21. And she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." And then Jesus offers her great words of hope. But before we get to those words, I just want to point something out about Martha. Here is a lady who has strong faith. She has the faith to believe that Jesus has the power to heal. And she believes that the resurrection of the dead will happen. It will happen on the last day. Well, Jesus adds to her belief in the resurrection because he says here in verse 23, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And then Jesus adds to her belief, and he says to her in verse 25, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." And he turns to Martha and asks a question. And it's a question that every single one of us need to answer. Do you believe this? Do we believe that Jesus is the resurrection and the life? And everyone who believes in him, though he die, yet he shall live. Do we believe this? And Martha's response in verse 27 is, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." What good news. Jesus offers the promise of the resurrection to all who believe in him. And Martha believes. And on this day of grieving, she needed to be reminded of this great promise. But Mary needs something different. Look here in verse 33. It says this. It says, "When Jesus saw Mary weeping and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, 'Where have you laid him?' And they said to him, 'Lord, come and see.' And Jesus wept." How does Jesus respond to Mary? Here's a woman who comes to Jesus with the very same words that her sister Martha says. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died." But he doesn't respond to her by giving her the promise of the resurrection. He responds to her by weeping. He enters into her pain. And there's a lesson we need to learn here. It's this, that different people need us to respond differently to their pain. Martha needed Jesus to share with her the hope of the resurrection, and Mary needed Jesus to cry with her and share her pain. You see, not every person needs the same thing. We shouldn't respond the same way to every grieving person. Some people need us to remind them of God's promises. They need a verse that's going to be the anchor for their soul when life is just in turmoil. Other people just simply need us to be with them, to be a compassionate presence, a listening ear, to cry with them and to pray with them. And so, as you encounter grieving people, let's adopt the very same example of Jesus here. Let's recognize that some people just need a shoulder to cry on. Other people need God's word to be their footing. And let's anchor our souls to this, that Jesus has the power over death. Jesus cares deeply for those he loves. And he desires all people to believe in him alone, so that they too might experience the resurrection of the dead and everlasting life.